A stormy night. A young woman kneels beside a man bleeding out on the empty road. She saves his life with her trembling hands, her heart racing with hope. But little did she know, the man she risked everything for would one day fall into the arms of another. Betrayal, love, and heartbreak. This is their story. Rain lashed against the cracked asphalt like 1,000 tiny needles, soaking through Emily Carter's thin jacket as she drove her old sedan down the winding road outside of Willow Creek. The night was pitch black, except for the occasional flicker of lightning across the horizon. Emily worked double shifts at the diner all week. Her body ached, her eyes stung, but she kept driving because she needed to get home to her sick mother. The hospital bills were piling high, and at only 23, Emily had learned more about sacrifice than most people did in a lifetime. As her wipers struggled against the torrent, something caught her eye, headlights flickering, then the sickening screech of metal. Just 100 yards ahead, a car had veered off the road, crashing into the ditch. Emily slammed her brakes, her heart leaping into her throat. She ran out into the rain, shoes sinking into the mud, until she reached the mangled vehicle. The front was crushed against a tree, steam hissing from the hood. Inside, through the cracked windshield, she saw him, unconscious, blood trickling down his temple. "God, no," she whispered, fumbling with the jammed door. "Stay with me, please." After a desperate tug, the door finally gave way. Emily crawled inside, shaking the stranger's shoulder. His breaths were shallow, but he was alive. "Sir, can you hear me?" No response. Her hands trembled, but she remembered something her mother had once told her. When someone's life is in your hands, fear has no place. She ripped off her scarf, pressed it hard against his bleeding wound, and dialed 911 with the other. The operator's calm voice guided her as Emily fought to keep him conscious. "What's your name?" she pleaded, her tears mixing with the rain. "Please, don't leave me." His lips barely moved, but she caught a whisper. "Daniel." That single word tethered him to life. By the time the ambulance arrived, Emily's clothes were drenched and stained with blood, but Daniel was still breathing. Emily followed the paramedics to the hospital, unable to walk away. Something inside her refused to leave him alone. She didn't know this man, didn't know him anything, but she felt bound to him, as though fate had woven their paths together in that storm. Hours later, as dawn painted the sky a soft gray, a doctor emerged. "Are you family?" he asked. Emily hesitated, then nodded faintly. I was the one who found him." The doctor gave her a small smile. "He's stable, thanks to you. If you hadn't acted quickly, he might not have made it." Relief washed over Emily so strong, she nearly collapsed in the waiting chair. She closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer of gratitude. When she finally peeked into his room, Daniel lay pale against the white sheets, his chest rising and falling steadily. Up close, he looked impossibly young, maybe 26 or 27, with strong features softened by weakness. Emily sat quietly by his side, not knowing why her heart clenched so tightly for someone she had just met. She brushed a strand of wet hair from her face, whispering, "You'll be okay. You have to be." But little did she know, this single act of kindness, saving Daniel's life, would bind her heart to him in ways she could never have imagined. And in time, it would break her in ways she never thought possible. The next morning, Daniel stirred awake. His gaze flickered around the room before landing on Emily. Confusion clouded his eyes. Who are you?" His voice was hoarse, fragile. Emily straightened, suddenly shy. "I'm Emily. You were in an accident." Her voice cracked. "I found you. I called the ambulance." Daniel blinked, struggling to process. "You saved me?" Emily gave a small nod. Something flickered in his eyes, gratitude, disbelief, perhaps even awe. He tried to lift his hand, but winced in pain. Emily instinctively reached out, her fingers brushing his lightly. "You're safe now," she whispered. For a moment, silence filled the room. Their eyes locked, and something unspoken passed between them. Something that felt too powerful, too sudden, like destiny knocking at the door. But fate is never so kind. Because even as Daniel looked at the woman who had pulled him back from the brink of death, life was already preparing a cruel twist. One that would leave Emily shattered, standing in the shadow of a love she thought was hers. Emily feels destiny pulling her toward Daniel, unaware that another woman will soon steal his heart. The days following the accident blurred together for Emily. She hadn't meant to stay at the hospital for so long, but every time she tried to leave, her feet wouldn't carry her away. Something about Daniel, his fragility, his quiet strength, even in pain, kept her tethered there. She told herself it was just responsibility. After all, she was the one who found him, the one who refused to let him slip away. But deep down, Emily knew it was more than that. On the third morning, she walked into his hospital room carrying a paper bag. "Breakfast," she said softly, setting it on the tray beside his bed. "I figured you're probably sick of hospital food." Daniel smiled faintly, his face still pale, but brighter than before. "You really didn't have to. I wanted to," Emily interrupted, then instantly felt her cheeks heat up. She looked away, pretending to fuss with the bag. He chuckled softly, watching her. "You're different." Emily's head snapped back. "Different how?" Daniel thought for a moment, his gaze steady. "Most people would have saved my life and disappeared. But you stayed." She opened her mouth, but no words came. He was right. She didn't owe him anything. And yet, leaving him alone felt impossible. "Maybe I just don't trust you not to do something reckless again," she teased weakly. His laugh filled the sterile room, warm and rich despite his injuries. For the first time since that stormy night, Emily felt something bloom in her chest, a fragile warmth she hadn't felt in years. Over the next week, Daniel's recovery became Emily's secret world. She worked her shifts at the diner, visited her mother in the evenings, and then, no matter how exhausted she was, she always found herself at his bedside. They talked for hours. Daniel told her about his work in architecture, his dream of designing a community center in Willow Creek, and the pressures of living up to his late father's legacy. Emily, in turn, opened up about her struggles, the weight of bills, her mother's fragile health, and her longing for something more than the small-town life she was stuck in. Sometimes, Emily confessed one night, her voice barely above a whisper, "I wonder if my whole life is just about survival. Wake up, work, pay bills, repeat. I don't even remember the last time I felt alive." Daniel's eyes softened. "But you saved me. That's more than survival. That's life at its purest." Her breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. No one had ever seen her like that before. But not everyone saw their growing closeness with kind eyes. Nurses whispered when Emily walked in, wondering aloud if she was Daniel's girlfriend. She wished she could say yes. But the truth was more fragile, undefined. They weren't anything. Not yet. Still, when Daniel smiled at her, when he asked her to sit beside him and share her stories, Emily let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe fate was giving her something beautiful at last. One afternoon, as Emily tucked fresh flowers into the vase on his bedside, Daniel looked at her with an intensity that made her hands freeze. "Emily," he said, his voice serious, "I don't know how to thank you. You gave me a second chance at life. That's not something I can ever repay." "You don't have to repay me," she murmured. "I didn't do it for that." "Then why?" His gaze locked onto hers. "Why risk yourself for a stranger?" Emily's throat tightened. The truth hovered on her lips, raw and vulnerable. "Because I care about you. Because in one night, you became more than a stranger to me." But she swallowed it down, forcing a small smile. Because it was the right thing to do. Daniel studied her for a long moment, as though he knew she was hiding something. Then, slowly, he reached out, brushing his fingers against hers. Her heart hammered so loudly she thought the whole hospital must hear it. By the time Daniel was discharged, Emily felt like she had lived a lifetime in those sterile white walls. She had shared her secrets, her laughter, her fears, all with a man she had known only a handful of days. And somehow, it felt like she had known him forever. On the morning of his release, she helped him pack his few belongings. "You really don't have to do this," he said, his smile teasing. Emily smirked. "What let you limp out of here carrying your own bag?" Not a chance. They stepped out into the sunlight together. For a brief, shimmering moment, it felt like a beginning. But beginnings are fragile things. And destiny has a way of tearing them apart. That evening, as Emily walked into her small home, her mother's voice carried from the living room. "Emily, you're home late again." Who's keeping you so busy? Emily hesitated, her cheeks warming. Just helping a friend. Her mother's sharp eyes caught the flicker in her expression. A friend, Emily gave a small smile, but said nothing more. She wasn't ready to explain, not until she knew what this was, what it could be. But as she lay in bed that night, her heart raced with a truth she couldn't ignore. She was falling for him. The next morning, Daniel called her. His voice sounded lighter, brighter, full of life. Emily, he said, I was wondering, would you like to meet me for coffee tomorrow? There's something I want to tell you. Her chest tightened. Of course. I'd love that. As she hung up, Emily pressed the phone to her chest, smiling to herself. She felt hope, real hope, for the first time in years. But she had no idea that the something Daniel wanted to tell her would change everything. And when she walked into that cafe the next day, her heart full of expectation, she would see the beginning of her own heartbreak. Emily believes Daniel wants to confess feelings, but he will soon reveal something that shatters her hope. The cafe smelled of roasted coffee beans and warm pastries when Emily walked in. She had worn her nicest dress, one she rarely took out of her closet, and a hint of lipstick she wasn't used to wearing. Her heart beat nervously, every step carrying her closer to what she imagined might be a new beginning. Daniel was already there, seated near the window, sunlight spilling across his face. When he looked up and saw her, his smile widened, the kind of smile that made her heart skip. Emily, he said, rising a little awkwardly with his healing ribs. You look amazing. Her cheeks flushed, and she took the seat across from him. For a moment, it felt perfect. Too perfect. They chatted lightly at first, about his recovery, about how strange it felt for him to be outside the hospital again. But Emily noticed something beneath his smile, a flicker of nervous energy, as if he were holding something back. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat. There's something I need to tell you. Her breath caught. This is it, she thought. He feels it too. But before he could continue, the cafe door opened, and a young woman walked in. She was radiant, her golden hair tumbling over her shoulders, her eyes sharp and confident. She scanned the room, then broke into a smile when she spotted Daniel. Daniel, she called, rushing over. Emily's stomach twisted as the woman leaned down and hugged him tightly, kissing his cheek as if she belonged there. Daniel's face lit up. Sophia, I was just about to. He stopped, glancing at Emily awkwardly. Sophia turned, her bright eyes settling on Emily. Oh, hi. I didn't realize you had company. Emily forced a smile, her hands trembling under the table. I'm just a friend. Emily, Daniel said quickly. This is Sophia. We've known each other since college. She's special. Emily felt the words like a knife. Special. Her chest tightened, but she forced her lips into another polite smile. It's nice to meet you. Sophia's eyes flickered over Emily briefly, and though her smile remained, there was something dismissive in it. She slid into the chair beside Daniel, her hand brushing his casually, possessively. And just like that, the air shifted. Emily sat through the rest of the coffee like a ghost at the table. Daniel tried to balance the conversation, but Sophia dominated it, her stories spilling out with ease. She spoke of her travels, her career in marketing, her dreams of moving back to Willow Creek permanently. Every laugh Daniel gave her, every glance he stole at Sophia's animated face, felt like a dagger in Emily's heart. When it was finally over, Sophia excused herself to take a call. The moment she was gone, Daniel leaned forward, his voice low. Emily, I wanted to explain. Sophia, she's someone from my past. We were close once, and now she's back in town. Emily swallowed hard, her throat dry. And what does that mean for you? He hesitated, his eyes clouding. It means I need to figure out what I feel. I owe it to her, and to myself. The words crushed her. She nodded faintly, not trusting her voice. Daniel reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. Emily, please don't think that what you've done for me doesn't matter. You saved me. You've been everything these past weeks. I don't want to hurt you, but he already had. Emily pulled her hand back gently, forcing a small smile. I understand. You need to do what feels right. Inside, though, her heart screamed. That night, Emily lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her mother's soft breathing came from the next room, the only sound in the small house. Emily clutched her pillow, replaying every moment of the cafe over and over. She had saved his life. She had been there when no one else was. She had given him her heart quietly, without asking for anything in return. And yet, he looked at Sophia with a light in his eyes that he never gave Emily. Tears burned her cheeks as the truth sank in. She wasn't the one. She was just the girl who found him broken on the road. Sophia was the one who fit into his world, the one he was drawn to. But even knowing that, Emily couldn't cut herself away. She couldn't stop caring. Days turned into weeks, and Emily watched from a painful distance as Daniel and Sophia grew closer. He still called Emily sometimes, still invited her to join them for coffee or a walk, but those moments only deepened the ache inside her. She felt like an outsider, orbiting around a world that was never truly hers. One evening, after her shift at the diner, Emily walked home and found Daniel waiting by her porch. "Daniel?" she whispered, surprised. He smiled softly. "I wanted to see you." "Can we talk?" She let him inside, her heart pounding. He sat on the worn couch, his hands clasped tightly together. "Emily, I don't know how to say this without sounding ungrateful. You mean so much to me. You were there when I needed someone the most. But with Sophia back, I feel like I owe it to us, to see where it goes." The words broke her, but she nodded, blinking away the tears threatening to spill. "I understand," she whispered. "No, Emily, please. Don't think for a second that what we have, means nothing. You'll always be someone I'll never forget. You gave me my life back." Her lips trembled, but she forced them into a small smile. "Then promise me one thing," she said. "What?" "That you'll be happy. Even if it's not with me." Daniel's eyes softened, and for a moment, she thought he might cry too. Instead, he leaned forward, pressing his forehead gently against hers. "Thank you, Emily," he whispered, and in that moment, Emily knew she had lost him. When the door closed behind him that night, Emily sank to the floor, sobs tearing through her. She had given everything, her time, her heart, her soul, and still it wasn't enough. But what she didn't know was that her story with Daniel wasn't over. Fate had more cruel twists in store, ones that would test her strength in ways she never imagined. Because love, once ignited, doesn't fade easily. And Emily's love for Daniel was about to be dragged into a storm far darker than the one that brought them together. Daniel chooses to explore his feelings with Sophia, leaving Emily heartbroken, but fate has more pain and complexity ahead. Autumn crept into Willow Creek with crisp mornings and golden leaves swirling across the sidewalks. For most people, it was a season of warmth and renewal. But for Emily, it was a season of quiet heartbreak. She still saw Daniel too often, in fact. He would call her, invite her to group outings with Sophia, and treat her with the same warmth he always had. But it was different now. His laughter was brighter when Sophia was near. His eyes softened whenever Sophia touched his hand. Emily told herself she should walk away. She should cut ties, protect her heart. But every time she tried, she remembered the night she saved him, the way his weak voice whispered his name, Daniel, and the way fate had tied them together in that moment. She couldn't let go. Not yet. One evening, Daniel invited Emily to a small gathering at his apartment. Sophia was hosting, of course, and the room glowed with her effortless charm. "Emily, so glad you came," Sophia said, brightly hugging her. The warmth in her voice felt rehearsed, almost like a performance. Emily smiled politely, though she noticed the way Sophia's eyes lingered, scanning her like she was measuring a threat. Throughout the evening, Emily sat quietly in the corner, sipping from her glass while Daniel and Sophia moved through the crowd like a perfect couple. He looked happy. Too happy. At one point, Daniel caught Emily's eye across the room. He gave her a small smile, the kind of smile that used to make her heart flutter. But now, it only twisted the knife deeper. Later that night, as Emily walked home alone under the dim streetlights, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. "Thank you for coming tonight. It meant a lot to me to have you there." She stared at the screen, tears burning her eyes. He didn't see it, did he? Didn't see how much it hurt her to stand in the shadows while he gave his heart to someone else. Still, she typed back, "Of course, Daniel. I'm glad you're happy." The lie tasted bitter, but it was all she could give him. Weeks passed, and Emily buried herself in work, trying to numb the ache inside. But the universe seemed cruelly determined to keep their lives intertwined. One rainy afternoon, Daniel showed up at the diner where she worked. His clothes were damp, his hair dripping, but his eyes lit up the moment he saw her. "Emily," he said, sliding into a booth. "I needed to see you." She grabbed a towel and handed it to him, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened. "You'll catch a cold out there," he laughed, rubbing his hair dry. "Sophia and I had a fight. I needed someone who understands me." Emily froze. He came to me. Her heart soared and sank all at once. They talked for hours that day. Daniel poured out his frustrations, how Sophia's ambitions sometimes clashed with his dreams, how he felt torn between what he thought he should want and what he truly needed. And through it all, Emily listened, nodding, offering comfort. At one point, he reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "You always make things clearer, Emily. I don't know what I'd do without you." Her breath caught. She wanted to say, "Choose me. Don't you see I've been here all along?" But instead, she just whispered, "I'll always be here for you." As Daniel left the diner that evening, Emily's coworker, Sarah, leaned against the counter with a knowing look. "You're in love with him," Sarah said bluntly. Emily's cheeks flushed. "It's not like that." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Then why do you look at him like he hung the stars?" Emily's silence was answer enough. That night, Emily dreamed of a life that wasn't hers. Daniel laughing in her kitchen, Sophia gone. The two of them building something real together. But when she woke, reality came crashing back. Daniel belonged to another. And fate, it seemed, wasn't done testing her. A few days later, Emily received a call she never expected. It was Sophia. "Emily," Sophia's voice was sharp, controlled. "We need to talk." Alone. Emily's heart stuttered. "About what?" "You know what," Sophia replied coldly. "Tomorrow. Noon. At the cafe." The line went dead. The next day, Emily walked into the cafe with trembling hands. Sophia was already there, her flawless appearance and icy smile like armor. "Sit," Sophia said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Emily obeyed, her chest tight. Sophia leaned forward, her voice low but cutting. "I see the way you look at Daniel, and I know he depends on you. But let's be clear, he's mine. Whatever fantasy you've built in your head, it ends here." Emily's throat tightened. "Sophia, I never." "Save it," Sophia interrupted. "I'm not blind. But Daniel doesn't need a broken little girl clinging to him out of gratitude. He needs someone who can stand by him, challenge him, give him the future he deserves. That's me. Not you." The words sliced deep, leaving Emily breathless. Sophia stood, grabbing her purse. "If you care about him, like you claim, then step aside. Don't make this harder for him." And just like that, she walked out, leaving Emily shattered in her chair. Emily stumbled home that evening, Sophia's words echoing in her skull. "Broken little girl. Step aside." She stared at her reflection in the mirror, at the tired eyes and the hollow cheeks from too many sleepless nights. Maybe Sophia was right. Maybe Emily was nothing compared to her. But as the tears fell, a spark of defiance lit inside her. She had saved Daniel's life. She had been there when no one else was. Maybe she wasn't as polished or perfect as Sophia, but she had something Sophia didn't. She had been Daniel's lifeline. And no matter how much it hurt, she couldn't walk away. Not yet. Because deep down, Emily still believed that fate hadn't brought Daniel into her life just to take him away. But fate was cruel. And soon, it would demand a price. Sophia directly confronts Emily, demanding she step aside. Emily feels crushed but refuses to give up on Daniel, setting the stage for an even more painful twist. Winter arrived in Willow Creek with biting winds and heavy skies. Emily buried herself in work at the diner, the clatter of dishes and smell of frying bacon her only constant. Yet no matter how hard she tried to focus, Daniel's presence lingered in every corner of her mind. She hadn't told him about Sophia's warning. She couldn't. If she did, it would only look like jealousy, and the last thing she wanted was for him to see her as desperate. So she carried the weight silently, even as it crushed her. One evening, as snowflakes drifted past the diner windows, Daniel walked in. He looked tired, his shoulders tense, his eyes shadowed. "Rough day?" Emily asked, sliding into the booth across from him. He exhaled heavily. "You could say that." "Sophia and we're not seeing eye to eye lately." Emily's heart gave a painful twist. She wanted to ask, "Why are you still with her then?" But instead, she bit her tongue. "She wants more than I can give," Daniel admitted. "She talks about moving away, chasing bigger dreams. And me? I want to stay here, to build something in Willow Creek, to honor my father's vision." Emily's voice was soft. "That doesn't make you wrong, Daniel. It just makes you different." He smiled faintly, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "You always know what to say." Her heart skipped. For one dangerous second, she let herself imagine that maybe, just maybe, he would finally choose her. But hope can be cruel. A week later, Emily saw them together at the town square tree lighting. Daniel's arm was around Sophia's shoulders, his laughter ringing in the cold night air. Sophia leaned against him like she belonged there, her smile dazzling. Emily stood at a distance, watching as if she were outside the glass, peering in at a life she could never touch. When Daniel finally spotted her, his face lit up. He waved her over, but Emily shook her head, forcing a smile before slipping away into the crowd. That night, she cried herself to sleep, whispering into the darkness, "Why wasn't saving your life enough?" The days blurred until another stormy night brought Emily back to the place where it all began. The diner, nearly empty, rain hammering against the windows. Daniel walked in again, drenched, his face pale and tight. "Daniel?" she asked, rushing toward him. "What happened?" He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "We broke up. Sophia and it's over." Emily froze. Her heart leapt with both joy and guilt. She pulled a chair beside him, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry. Are you okay?" He looked up at her, his eyes wet with unshed tears. "I thought she was the one. But maybe I was wrong." Emily's hand hovered over his, aching to close the gap. Daniel. For the first time, his gaze lingered on her, not as a friend, not as a savior, but as something more. Her breath caught as he leaned closer, his lips parting as though to say something. But just then, the diner door burst open. "Daniel!" Sophia stood there, soaked from the rain, her eyes wild. "Please," she begged, rushing forward. "Don't let this end. I was wrong. I love you." The entire world seemed to freeze. Emily sat paralyzed, her heart caught in her throat, as Daniel's torn gaze shifted between the two women. The diner became a battlefield of silence. Sophia fell to her knees, gripping Daniel's hands. "I can change. I'll stay here. I'll follow your dreams. Just don't leave me." Emily's chest ached. She wanted to scream, to remind him who had stood by him when no one else did. But her voice wouldn't come. Daniel closed his eyes, his jaw tightening. Finally, he whispered, "Sophia," her name, not hers. Emily rose from the booth, her legs trembling. "I should go," she whispered. "Emily, wait." Daniel called after her, but she shook her head, forcing a brittle smile. "No, Daniel. You've made your choice." And then she walked into the storm, tears mixing with the rain, her heart shattering with every step. For days, Emily avoided him. She threw herself into work, into caring for her mother, into anything that would numb the pain. But nothing dulled it. The memory of his almost confession haunted her, as did the image of Sophia pulling him back into her arms. Then one evening, as Emily closed the diner, she found Daniel waiting outside. "Emily," he said softly. Her breath caught, anger and longing colliding inside her. "Why are you here?" "Because I can't lose you," he whispered. Her chest tightened. "But you already chose her." He stepped closer, his voice raw. "I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm being torn in two. When I'm with Sophia, it feels familiar. But when I'm with you," his voice broke. "When I'm with you, I feel alive." Tears filled Emily's eyes. "Then why am I always the second choice?" Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled away, shaking her head. "I can't keep doing this, Daniel. I can't keep saving you, only to watch you run to her." Her words cut the night air like glass. Daniel stood frozen, guilt carved across his face. And for the first time, Emily realized she had a choice too. That night, Emily sat by her window, staring at the storm clouds rolling across the sky. She thought of the night she found him, broken and bleeding. She thought of the laughter they shared in the hospital, the promises in his eyes. She thought of Sophia's cruel words, of being invisible at gatherings, of standing in the shadows. She had saved his life. But who was saving hers? As the clock ticked past midnight, Emily whispered into the darkness, "I love you, Daniel." But maybe love isn't enough. She wiped her tears, her heart heavy with a decision she knew she had to make. Because if she didn't, this storm would consume her completely. And yet, even as she resolved to step away, fate had one last, devastating twist in store. Daniel confesses his torn feelings, but Emily realizes she must choose her own survival. Still, fate isn't finished with them. The morning came heavy with fog, the kind that clung to the streets like a veil, muting the world in gray. Emily hadn't slept. Her decision pressed against her chest like a weight. She couldn't keep living in the shadow of someone else's love. She had to end it, whatever fragile thread tied her to Daniel. But before she could gather her courage, her phone buzzed. It was Daniel. "Emily, can we meet? Please." "It's important." Her heart clenched. Against her better judgment, she agreed. They met at the park where the river bent, the same spot Daniel had once told her about his father's dreams. He stood waiting under the bare trees, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, eyes clouded. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, bracing against the cold. "What is it, Daniel?" He hesitated, then looked straight at her. "I can't stop thinking about you. About us. I know I've hurt you, but I can't pretend you don't mean more to me than I've admitted." Her breath caught. "Daniel." He stepped closer, his voice breaking. "You saved my life, Emily. Not just that night on the road, but every day after. You made me see things differently. I don't know how I was too blind to realize it before." Tears stung her eyes. This was everything she had wanted to hear, everything she had dreamed of. But it was too late. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I can't keep being your second choice. Every time you waver, every time you go back to her, it breaks me. I love you, but love shouldn't feel like this." He reached for her hands, desperation in his eyes. "I'm not going back to Sophia. Not this time. I choose you." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "And what happens when she pulls you back again? What happens when I'm standing alone, watching you give her the pieces of your heart that I can never touch?" His grip tightened. "Please, don't walk away. I need you." Her voice cracked. "But Daniel, who needs me when I'm the one bleeding?" Silence hung heavy between them. The river roared in the distance, and for the first time, Daniel's words failed him. Emily gently pulled her hands free. "You once said I gave you life, but now I have to give myself mine. Goodbye, Daniel." She turned and walked away, each step shattering and freeing her all at once. Daniel called her name, his voice echoing in the fog, but she didn't look back. Days turned into weeks. Emily poured herself into her mother's care, into saving for nursing school, into rediscovering the parts of her life she had neglected while chasing someone else's heart. There were nights she cried herself to sleep, nights she almost called him. But slowly, the ache dulled. Slowly, she remembered who she was without Daniel. One afternoon, she returned to the very road where it had all begun, the sharp curve, the scarred tree still bearing the mark of his crash. She stood in the silence, the winter wind tugging at her hair, and whispered, "I saved your life, Daniel. But now, I've saved mine too." For the first time in months, she felt at peace. As for Daniel, he never forgot her. He tried to mend things with Sophia, but it didn't last. Something was missing, something he had lost the moment Emily walked away. He often thought of her, the girl who pulled him back from death, who loved him enough to let him go. And though regret haunted him, deep down he knew she was right. Some loves are meant to save us, but not all are meant to stay. She saved his life, but he gave his heart to another. And in the end, she realized that sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to walk away. Emily's story isn't about losing. It's about finding the strength to choose herself, even when it hurts the most. What would you have done if you were in her place? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of love, heartbreak, and the choices that define us.